Aloha. Today I wanted to do a video and hopefully keep it quick. I don't know what's going to come up with it, but my intention is to keep it quick because this information has already been expanded upon by most of my previous videos. But anytime I get an idea that references a new or a new-ish perspective of how all of this stuff fits together, I like to share it with people so it can add a little more color or light to how deep these programs really go. And when they're referenced to something that is obvious, then it makes it easier to understand, because there's still a lot of issues that I reference in these videos that people have difficulty with interpreting or digesting or seeing how it fits in reference to the so-called bigger pictures of whether it's flat earth or the Mandela effect or any of the other stories. Specifically, I've been focusing on the flat earth perspective and really using that as a platform or a foundation to give an example of how deep this program really goes. That's kind of like where I'm coming from when I put these videos out. And just to give another perspective on why I reference flat earth as much as I do, because I do feel like it really is one of the biggest parasites or diseases that affect consciousness as a whole, which is why I'm most likely going to name this video How Flat Earth Breaks the Micromanagement of Human Consciousness, and really give a perspective of how this is not limited to the basic interpretations of physical warfare, like the warfare of the colonial program. That's just the physical manifestation that had first been developed by the psychological warfare and separation of humanity from expanded consciousness, and before that into the spiritual warfare that is heavily expanded by the religious program, which doesn't take a lot of effort to look at even wars today, but wars back in the day, which were founded in the religious perspective of destroying those who don't think the same as you, based upon the haves and the have-nots program. So the people who win the wars write the history books. And if you, as ancestors of the people who were slaughtered, genocided, and killed as a result of those wars on every level, if you don't agree or if you challenge the system that has written those history books, then you are a threat to the control grid as a whole, and you need to be indoctrinated. You need to be conditioned into the society that is based upon controlling not only your physical body, but your psychological body and your spiritual body. That's how far this goes. And the distraction is really going, the distraction is based upon locking people into the perspective of history books or the general interpretation, the mainstream interpretation of reality, in order to keep people from going into the depths of, how far this stuff goes. Because if you're caught up in microcosms of the story and not really addressing the entire system, that is at the heart of the separation program and the limiting of your consciousness expansion, which is at the heart of controlling people. Same way they control technology. It's just an example of making you pay for an iPhone 7 that was invented in 1981. you're paying $500 today, which was probably like what, $5,000 back in the day when it was actually invented. And not to mention the fact that that's a total separation from the human technology that we exist as. So since we're so caught up in the materialistic version of reality, we don't even know what our basic human nature is. We don't know what our basic human technology is, our relationships to nature and relationships to each other, our relationships to the sun, the moon, to the soul experience as a whole. We don't know. We've been limited by the sciences, sciences of this mainstream reality, which is basically the platform or the foundation to this video of micromanagement. In reference to micromanagement, anybody who's ever known a micromanager knows that everything gets slowed down. Everything gets slowed down by the micromanager. People get pissy. They get the work doesn't really get done. The perspectives are limited by the micromanager. Everything is run by ego or artificial ego. Emotions are played, and alternative perspectives of whatever's being micromanaged are either beat down or completely distracted from, or discouraged from even speaking about or saying anything, because you're literally threatening the power or control of that micromanager. This is what the heliocentric model is. This is what the education system is. Excuse me. It is a micromanaging of the human consciousness and has the same effect that a micromanager at Office Depot does on the employees there. It's based upon control and dominance, and basically no difference than like supremacy. Like you are just a little nothing. You listen to me. I am in charge of you. I have to be in charge of every single part of this reality in order to make it perfect, in order to make it better for everything. So that's like a king or a queen perspective, or the colonial perspective. It's limited to what the system, the level of consciousness of that individual, and what gets missed is the true balance and expansion of the individuals, the majority of the people, the actual people doing the work. Things could be done so much quicker, so much more efficient if you were to utilize the perspectives and the energy of the people, and moving around the logistics of the entire process, instead of limiting the process to your perspective, just to maintain control and power over people. A lot of the micromanaging comes from a deeper insecurity that exists when in individuals. That's a well-known psychological program. People who get a little bit of power and they are insecure about the person that they are, whether they're younger than other people or whether they are shorter than people. It has the same effect on the system. They have to overcompensate in order to maintain their dominance over people. And this is where emotions get in. This is why the emotional grid of the mainstream media is so effective on people, because it creates that. And no different than the blonde hair, blue eyed Jesus program has on the subconscious of the majority of people, which are the melanated people of the earth plane. So you have this supremacy program that is being sparked and shocked within the subconscious of the majority of people when we don't even know it, because we are simultaneously being manipulated to see the perspectives based upon a reality that is written by the historical documenters who have literally genocided and massacred largely peaceful populations. This is where I'm coming from in reference to the people who don't live like the materialistic perspective pushers of neo-colonialism and neo-slavery and the Columbian era. This is all based upon, the whole capitalistic so-called democratic processes, and Western so-called civilization is based upon materialism and dominance over the feminine aspect, dominance over people as a whole, dominance over the animal kingdom, dominance over nature, dominance over the earth, dominance over your religious perspective, dominance over your so-called innovation of the future, dominance of your time, dominance of your history. It's all based upon dominating your every move in this experience, from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to sleep at night, and beyond, when you realize that your very dreams are being affected by the micromanagement of your waking state. This is where you get dreams of being at work. Like when I used to work at Home Depot, I used to have dreams of working at Home Depot. Or when I was working, wherever I was working, you would have dreams so literally your dreams are being stolen, just like your waking state dreams or life is being stolen. And some people say, well, nobody can steal anything. It's all given away. Yeah. At the same time, there is a manipulative magic that is being utilized on people. It's an actual alchemy that is utilized to dominate people and keep people in a limited state of consciousness, both individually and collectively. You can see this with the Stockholm Syndrome. You can see this with the way the mainstream reality is run as a whole. Basically, everybody is limited to a Stockholm Syndrome. And we exist in no less than two worlds or universes where you have your linear perspective and your non-linear perspective. Your non-linear perspective is, or physical and the non-physical, or the conscious and the subconscious. The linear perspectives, or the conscious reality, is based upon limitation for a learning experience at its most basic level, when you are also the soul having this linear experience, which is largely not limited. It's infinite. It's not limited to the linear constructs of reality. It is only using the linear constructs of reality to have an experience, to balance out an experience. But when we this is why the feminine aspect gets the balances of the reality as a whole, but specifically the feminine aspects of this patriarchal program are dominated and destroyed, because once you are locked into the finite perspective or the linear program, then you can be dominated and controlled by the people who are pulling the strings, the linear strings of your reality. So one of the biggest puppeteer strings or linear strings of this reality is the heliocentric model, which is at the core of dominating your consciousness, because it wipes clean your relationship to your soul essence, not only your nature, your infinite reality. Not only does it wipe it clean, but it adds a distraction program, which is stuff like the Big Bang, the monkey evolution, the transhumanism perspectives of reality. It adds all this stuff. And even on like shallower perspectives of the monetary system, you have like this Obama taking money to speak at banks. This is just another control grid to to maintain a particular level of consciousness based upon the limitations of the system as a whole. It's a very intricate system. So on one level, you're saying, yeah, and you're being told that he should be able to make the money because the presidents before him been making that money. What it really does is that it actually validates the integrity of, or the so-called integrity of, the individual when you understand that the banking influence of the slave mind control program as a whole, the Colombian era as a whole, is very vibrant in this society. So he's actually adding to, and it's not just him, it's everybody who's been doing this, but this is the complex program that is designed to keep people in that mentality, because it's creating a Hegelian dialectic for you to fall in. As long as you keep falling in the programs that are created for you to fall in, the holes or the gaps of reality that are meant for you to fall in, you will never be able to empower yourself or see how far this reality really goes, because your horizons are being generated for you. So when you see stuff, just for example purpose, like the whole Obama taking $400,000 for a speaking fee to big bankers and all that other stuff, what you're really falling into is the idea that Obama is different from any of the other programs that exist out there, the presidents, the supremacy program, the political program, that whole dominating and control grid as a whole, the colonial program as a whole. And you're really falling into the same storyline of that happened in 2008 when we supposedly had our first black president and everything is changing. Isn't this amazing? We should be celebrating forever. When actual fact, you are just being bamboozled from your reality of control that was being expanded into the so-called war on terrorism by George Bush, the like one of the pinnacles, if not the pinnacle of the military industrial complex. Giving you your so-called first black president was really just a design to tell you to shut your mouth. Shut up. Don't think about your reality. We give you your reality. And when it's time for you to shut up, you're just going to shut up because we have these designs. And I was thinking about this the other day in reference to so-called 2020. This is that up and down program that gets played on the consciousness as a whole, where you have good president, bad president, good president, bad president. And the same thing goes with all these politicians and everything. It's a design to manipulate your consciousness. And as long as you keep getting caught up within the story as it's told to you and not looking at the board itself, that's the focusing on the checker game and not realizing the three-tiered chess game of the spirit, the mind, and the body chess game that's being played. Once you're caught up in the checkerboard that's sitting on top of those chess games, and you're locked in, you're caught. So the Obama perspective as a whole automatically is a checker game. To expand it beyond that is to add, not only add credibility to the system as it's run today as the pinnacle of human evolution, but to also attack the integrity of the system as a whole, or the people as a whole, by locking them into a perspective that is so shallow, so basic, like this image is showing of Trevor Noah telling people to stop freaking out over Obama's $400,000 speaking fee because he should get that money. If every white president before him got that money, then he should get that money. So it just makes you focused on the monetary perspective as it's given to you and not really address the slave mentality of the fiat currency system and the maritime time system as a whole. So all of these things are affected both consciously and subconsciously, but largely subconsciously. We don't look at the slave system when our perspectives, our consciousness is given to us by people who are put out there in the mainstream media, like Trevor Noah, like Barack Obama, like Alex Jones and TYT and Donald Trump and all of these activists that come out of Hollywood to speak about politics and all this other stuff. This is to keep you, it's to micromanage, literally micromanage your reality. These are the micromanagers. The colonial perspective is the micromanager of your reality. And whatever the belief systems are of the micromanagers of that reality will be your belief structures, because you are not even allowed to think differently. In fact, if you think differently than the micromanagers of your reality, something is wrong with you. You are outside of the status quo and you need to be dealt with. This is no different than, like I said before, about the so-called history makers, the people who write the history books. And think about, for example purposes today, like even think about what television looks like today and what television looked like 50 or 60 years ago, like how racist that and garbage that mentality was. Think about how television looks today. How we are still talking about the so-called white Oscars, the whitewashing of reality, the Hollywood as it exists today, your mainstream actors, your mainstream politicians. Look at that program today and really see that it's no different than 1940, 1950, 1960, and that whole mentality. It's just being dressed and sold to you a different way to make it give off the illusion that it's different. But my main point is that look at how it is today. Look at how we look at the television as it was sold to us decades ago, how different that is, and realize that 2 decades from today, 4 decades from today, we will still have that mentality. So for example, 2060, look at what today's mainstream television, Hollywood, politics, look at how that will look like, because of how much it will change, just based upon the level of or the velocity of change of today, because it's exponential growth. It will, as the information comes out to reveal the system for what it is, it'll shift not just on a linear velocity, but it'll that velocity will exponentially grow onto itself, which won't take. So if it took 50 years for stuff to change when information wasn't being shared, then it will take, for example, it's not mathematically exact, but it'll take like half that time for the same amount of information to shift the level of consciousness of people in the so-called future. So if it took 50 years before now, it'll take 25 years now that information is being shared to actually do the same amount of conscious expansion or movement. And imagine for this moment how it would feel to look back 20 years from now, 40 years from now, at what today is, and how just so far from the balances of reality exist today. Like, it's horrible. It is really sickening to look at what's going on today, and one of the main reasons why we get caught up in the way it is just because, oh, well, that's just the way it is. That's how things are. Everything is just the way it is because, that's the way it's always been. And that's the mentality of hopelessness and helplessness, which is the side effect to manipulating the consciousness of the masses as a whole. This is why I was talking about the micromanaging of humanity, is the micromanaging of consciousness. It's the micromanaging of the evolution of consciousness as a whole, the way you perceive your reality right now and the way your reality expands in the so-called future. So to close it all out, I just wanted to give some examples of like how this system is, just run through them real quick because I pretty much expanded about upon all of these topics, but to expand on the literal micromanaging, perspectives, so we can see how far it goes. So we have the micromanaging of everything is everything that is put out by the mainstream media, or even the internet, the Google internet, Google, YouTube, social media, that is all micromanaged because it is filtered through the system. So this is why all of these things that I'm getting ready to list off are inherently micromanaged. The mainstream media, like local news and mainstream news and all that stuff, that's just the obvious micromanaging of your perspectives of reality. But when you really look at it, your entire reality that is within the Colombian Western civilization is a total micromanagement at the expense of nature, at the expense of the majority of people on this earth plane, at the expense of your time and your experience as a whole. So everything, your conspiracy theories, you got Alex Jones is one of the biggest micromanagers of the so-called conspiracy theory reality, where he's the controlled opposition to be put out there and be beat up by the status quo system to keep you from learning for yourself and seeing how these programs are being manipulated beyond the checker game. So you have the climate change mentality. Presidents give you a micromanaging of your consciousness when they say that they are the leaders of the free world. This is a alchemical code that keeps you from expanding beyond the limitation program that is saying that today's civilization is the best civilization in the universe because it is the evolutionary peak of humanity, based upon the monkey evolution, based upon the Big Bang from nothingness to an iPhone 7. Through dinosaurs, through the creation of the earth, through the monkey evolution, through cavemen, through the animal kingdom, all the way up to Bill Gates and Steve Jobs being able to create an iPhone 7, which you use every day. You use it every day. So this system is free. So that's how they hold this control. It's all playing your emotional body and your emotional grid. So presidents talking about whatever it is they talk about is another way to micromanage your reality. Climate change is another micromanaging of your reality that specifically inflames the heliocentric model and the so-called powers that be to be the saviors of your reality. So it locks you down on so many different ways. It makes you believe that the earth is the way it's been told to us, and it also gives you the program of believing that the so-called powers that be should be empowered as the saviors of your reality. So this is where the whole voting system comes in. It micromanages your so-called movement or ability to change the reality based upon the limitations of the voting program that's spaced out 2 years and 4 years and 8 years, or based upon your politicians that are all put in those seats. You're not voting. That stuff doesn't exist. It's not voting is an illusion of engagement of your reality. These people are placed in there And if you keep believing that voting makes a difference in all that other stuff, you're not even playing checkers. You're just one of the pieces on the checkerboard being moved around by the people who are actually playing checkers. So you don't even go into the chess game. You just play checkers and shut your mouth. Technology is a micromanaging of the expansion or the so-called innovation of humanity, and all this other stuff is being utilized to have a particular effect on the people. Transhumanism is supposed to be the next evolutionary step of humanity based upon the Columbian perspective of reality. They tell you innovation, that even that word, Bill Nye using that word to reference the expansion of human consciousness, is it's all a sham. It's all a design to maintain control over the masses. So you have stuff like transhumanism. Not only does it slow down the consciousness by micromanaging the expansion or the focus of reality, but it also installs, like I said before, it plays on every angle. So this also installs a program that you like want and need, and in your emotional body are actually manifesting into your reality and so-called future timelines, because that's how you've been conditioned and programmed. So you have the American dream, which is another example of micromanaging your time. So the American dream micromanages your time by saying that the status quo says, well, you're supposed to get a degree, you're supposed to get a house, get married, and have a really good paying job, and have babies and be successful. And, you know, the only way you should be able to do that, or should do that, is to lock yourself into a 9-to-5 job and provide for all of the materialistic needs that are sold to you by the commercial mind control program. And, you know, that's what success is. Okay, you should do that. And if you don't do that, then, you know, something's wrong with you. So that's a micromanaging of your life if you fall into that perspective, which is, at its essence, is to steal your time and lock you into the slave program. So you have genetically modified foods. GMOs are being told to be good for you. That's a micromanaging of the food that you eat. So everything that I'm listing off right now is an example, a zoomed in example of the macro management program, which is the whole control of consciousness as a whole. So the only way this system will work is if these so-called powers that be give you the mentality that you, quote unquote, need to be having in order to be successful. So the food that you drink, the water, or the food that you eat, the water that you drink, the thoughts that you think, the movement that you make, the time that you have, the way you raise your children, the values that you generate, or live by, the system, every part from when you wake up in the morning to when you go to sleep, and even your dreams, is given to you. Your thoughts, your consciousness is given to you by the system. That is how far this system needs to go. And one way that we build one of the biggest pillars to this system is because we all understand that this is slavery at its essence, and you have slave masters, but we get caught up in the physical slavery of it and really don't challenge the psychological or spiritual slavery from the spiritual warfare and the psychological warfare, because of how dumbed down our generations before us that exist today in our genetic makeup, in our psychological makeup, and how we face our reality. Will we challenge it at all? Well, your parents didn't, your grandparents didn't, your great-great-grandparents didn't, generations before you, just, you know, they were successful. They did in the system. They did whatever it is that they did. They didn't ask any questions. That's the design as a whole, to keep you from going further into it. And one of the biggest pillars of this system, like I said, it's not the only pillar, but it's one of the ones that I reference a lot, is the war on the melanated people, and how this of the entire earth plane, and this is part that builds up the supremacy program, which is not limited to a racial construct, but it is a very large part when you understand the blonde hair, blue eyed Jesus program, the Hollywood and the politics. The face that looks like when I reference those words has a very specific look and feel. And what I'm saying is that has an effect on individuals and the collective as a whole. And the formalized interpretation of this were definitions of your reality, like black people are only 3/5 of a human, of a white person. You're only 3/5 of a white man if you have any bit of black blood in you. What that does to the individual is it steals the humanity and empowers the individual who is supposed to be the status quo for humanity. It empowers them as the superpower of this reality. And that stuff exists not only in the conscious constructs of people who are following those so-called ideals, but it also affects and weighs down and adds density and emotional destruction on every level of other people. This is when you have kids hating themselves because they're too dark, or you have kids hating themselves because they don't look like the Frozen princess or Emma Watson and the Beauty and the Beast and all that other stuff, right? This is a very controlled system that goes far beyond what you're reading in your history books. So this is the micromanaging of your psyche, the micromanaging of your spiritual engagement in this reality, not only to dumb you down, but to build up the so-called powers that be as it's being programmed. And like I said, it's not limited to race, but the face of this control grid does have a particular look and feel to it when you understand that the supremacy program is still very alive and well and very much a part of this program as it's being expanded today, and as it was openly expanded in days before today. People think because things look different on television that means things have changed. That's a lie, and that's a distraction from the system as a whole. So that was just kind of a tangent from all the other things, but I'll get back to the examples of how literally every part of your reality, from the elements of your reality, the food, the water, is being manipulated to have an effect. So you have the gentrification that is accepted by the system, and actually inflamed by pushed by the system, pushing people out of their communities and allowing other people with money to move in. So basically your humanity is second best or secondary to the monetary system. What's more important is money over humanity. That's what this system is telling you. And the focus of the way this program is designed is it's the worst thing. It's horrible. It's not just limited to the perspectives that you are told to speak about. It's actually far beyond that, and it goes down to your actual definitions of life, nature, and human nature as a whole. So this is why I say a lot of the times that this system is largely based upon inhumanity. It's inhumane. And the only way, or one of the biggest ways that we allow that system to remain inhumane is because we don't even know what humanity is. We don't know what the balances of nature are. We don't know what the relationship to the physical reality, nature, the balances of nature. We don't know what that stuff is because we're too focused on the imbalances of reality. So this is why things like oil drilling is allowed to go based upon the Colombian technology of today. This is why gentrification is allowed to go on. This is why focusing on people only living in cities and not being able to grow your own gardens or have your own community and provide for yourself is because you are supposed to be a slave. You're supposed to be a slave to the system of the so-called powers that be. That's the status quo. If you want to be that, you must be some kind of hippie. You must be some kind of weird new ager or something like that. All of these labels are controlled labels out there to make you think and feel a certain way. And ultimately, the side effect is you just end up thinking and doing whatever they tell you to think and do. That's the effect. So one of the other biggest effects is micromanaging of the world with this so-called regime change, when they tell you that they're fighting terrorism and the war on terror, when they're only really going in there to steal the resources of these countries and affect the system as a whole, telling you it's for freedom. They're giving them democracy. No, this is inhumanity being commercialized. So this is how war is good for humanity. That's what they're telling you, because it's freedom and it's democracy and it's the American way and we're the best thing in the universe. All that at the expense of taking it all the way back to the indigenous and the aboriginal people that led up, that is at the foundation. All of the power that exists, so-called power that exists in the idea of the United States superpower and the system, the materialistic control grid as a whole is sitting on top of the blood and the bones of the indigenous and the aboriginal people. And then you have to take it a step even further, where people say, I am so thankful for the reality that we have today. I'm so thankful for the American dream. I'm so thankful for the way we have an iPhone 7 and technology and all this other stuff. Never really goes into what those things that you're supposedly thankful for are sitting on top of. And it creates literally a synthetic universe built on the blood and the bone, the scabs, the dried up blood of people before you that you just act like don't exist because it's too painful. Or maybe just you've gone so far that you say, well, we need to just move on. Just move on. Everything's okay. All right. Hollywood micromanages your entertainment. They tell you what entertainment is. They also install how you're supposed to think psychologically. So if your entertainment is based upon whatever they're telling you in Hollywood, then you don't understand, like, you're so consumed with that entertainment, you don't really go into like the wisdom of your ancestors or the stories of your ancestors to understand like relationships and reality as a whole. The Hollywood mainstream program or condition becomes your reality. And we see it as entertainment, but it's actually mind conditioning. Religion is another way to micromanage your spiritual perspective, your spiritual relationships, even your relationship to nature. When you see that the mainstream religious programs are based upon the foundation of the military-industrial complex, and everything is okay because that's the way things are. You know, they're doing it for the Jesus. Jesus told Donald Trump or George Bush to go attack Iraq, and, you know, we got to spread that freedom and democracy. So God bless America. You have this so-called Christian world perspective, where even when you go grocery shopping, you're surrounded by Christmas lights and Santa Claus and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and little elves and all this other stuff. That is a micromanaging of your mentality. In fact, people feel bad consciously and subconsciously when they don't have the same belief systems as their society. They could celebrate it and say anything about Christmas or whatever, and people putting Christmas lights up everywhere. That story is not told, because then you have I'm the victim. How dare you not say Merry Christmas back to me? What are you, some kind of monster? What is this happy holidays nonsense? Are you trying to destroy Christmas? How dare you? That's un-American. That's how far this nonsense goes into micromanaging your reality. This is no different than Thanksgiving being celebrated, Christopher Columbus Day being celebrated. All of this stuff is literally sitting on top of the blood and the bones of the indigenous and the aboriginal people. It is the literal overcompensation of your perspective reality so that you don't investigate the origins of the system as it exists today. That's how far this program goes. Is to overcompensate, and then once you are so overcompensated in that reality, it has to defend itself by victimizing itself against whatever it is that you're talking about. Either victimizing itself or adding some kind of ad hominem attack against you, like, you're wrong. You are wrong for talking about the native people. In fact, you should move on. You're racist for bringing up this stuff. Aren't you thankful and grateful for what this system has provided for you? You are some kind of monster if you don't celebrate the 4th of July, where we celebrate our Independence Day. How dare you? I'm supposed to be thankful for the genocides and massacres that added up to the mind control programming and conditioning of my ancestors and the culture of my culture of today. I'm supposed to celebrate that, and I'm a monster because I don't buy into that program anymore. And in fact, I understand how it works on society as a whole. We're monsters for thinking that way. Oh. This is how far this stuff really goes. So, and this is how it's inflamed. Just like when you go grocery shopping and you see all the turkeys for Thanksgiving Day and Christmas lights for Christmas. The local news actually does this every day. So the local news is expanding the so-called Christmas mentality through what you should be focusing on, how you should think. These are the good people. These are the bad people. The inner cities are the bad people. Something's wrong with them. They're very destructive and dangerous and criminals. And these are the good people. These are happy little YouTube videos. And this is wonderful. Everything is just okay when it comes from these people. But when you talk about those people, something is very wrong. You are dangerous and you're some kind of radical, or you shouldn't be talking about that. That has nothing to do with this. Okay. NASA micromanages your so-called future when they're telling you that they're going to Mars in 2020, or they're going to the moon in 20 whatever, and they're going here and there, while they're simultaneously sucking out the tax dollars or the energy or the baby food from your baby's mouth right underneath your nose, because you believe in that illusion that makes you give billions and billions of dollars away to that system. Public education system has the same effect on children as The local news has on the adults. The public education system sets the foundation. It micromanages your focus. You're only supposed to learn United States history. You're not, and if you're going to learn so-called African American history, which is like a triple mind control program. If you're going to learn about your so-called your history, you learn African American history. And this is what African American history is. Look, it's all based upon Black History Month. If you want to learn, see, look, everything should be okay. You have Black History Month. Let us have a White History Month and see what that looks like. See what that feels like. Go into that. See how that exists. That won't exist though. Because you have to only look at one side of reality. And if you were to go in that information, a lot of these systems would be completely destroyed. Because you'll see that they still exist today. So the education system sets the focus and then the importance of your reality, your entire perspective of reality from kindergarten up until adulthood is given to you by the status quo called education, or the university system. Sets the platform for conditioning. So it tells you what's good and what's bad. Everything in this micromanagement program tells you what's good and what's bad. Movies celebrate the whole system. Zoos existing out there the way they exist today gives you your reality on how you should relate to nature. The enslavement of like whales and elephant and bears and lion and tigers and all these things that are like these divine creatures in so many ways, that having zoos and circuses out there, and like we had Marine World back in the Bay in Vallejo in the Bay Area and they have SeaWorld in San Diego, but you know, you're supposed to celebrate this stuff when you go to Marine World and go see the dolphin flipping around in there, and Shamu flipping around in SeaWorld, or these killer whales jumping around because the humans tell them to, and they give them this little doggy treat of fish. You are subconsciously being controlled to think that enslavement is the best way of life. In fact, it's entertainment, and it's great to enslave nature. It's the human way. So this is what Disney programs are. This is what Disney World, Disneyland, all this stuff, cartoons, all this stuff is designed that way. Ultimately, this micromanaging of human consciousness does more harm than good. That's the design of it, is to do more harm than good. Because if there's more harm done in your reality, then that means there's more things that can be so-called fixed or addressed by the saviors who are put out there for you, who actually were pulling the strings that added up to that destruction in the first place. It's a vicious cycle of empty infinity that is based upon your lack of understanding, and in fact your destruction, your voting for, or your acknowledgement, you're giving the okay to the system as it's run today. And it's not you that's giving that okay, it's the conditions that you've been conditioned and programmed to think as, that's giving the approval of this destructive reality. So that's pretty much all I had for this video. I know it kind of went longer than I thought it was going to be, a short video, but I needed to expand it and really go into like how I was talking about micromanaging, so I had to give the micro examples of every single micro, not every single one, but a good chunk of the micro examples of the macro management control program of humanity as a whole. And like all of those things I just listed off are the distraction programs that keep you away from challenging the heliocentric program. These are some of the reasons why people can't even allow themselves to entertain the idea of flat Earth, because your perspective reality is given to you by the people who believe in the heliocentric model. So that's basically what the micromanagement program does, individually and collectively. So that's basically why I had today. So thank you for joining me. And thank you once again to people who share the videos and comment and like and support this channel. Thank you again. I really appreciate it. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.